So we have Eoghan O'Leary from the Tuition Centre. Eoghan, welcome to Raise the Game. Eoghan is a maths teacher and Eoghan teaches Leaving Cert and Junior Cert maths. So Eoghan, just talk to me. Why do so many students struggle with maths?
Morning, Ray. Good to see you again. Well, why do so many students struggle with maths? Now, that is a big question, Ray. There's you could be talking from 3-year-olds to 90-year-olds there, but let me give you an example. We can go from there. A student a couple of years ago came to me for help. She was in 6th year, and she said after a couple of grinds, I knew that she was struggling a little bit, and I said, "How are you getting on?" And she gave this line which stuck with me. She said, "I'm not very good at maths, and I don't know why." She said, "I'm good at everything else, but not maths." She said, "I got all A's in my junior cert, but a C in maths." And she said, "I just don't get it." So anyway, we teased that out a little bit, and we kind of looked into why it might be. So she said she was okay at maths in primary school, no problem. And when we looked into it, I asked her the question. I said to her, "Were you missing for a period of time in 2nd year?" And she was missing for a couple of weeks because she was sick. And as it happened, that's when they started algebra. And they learned about the concepts of algebra, the terminology of algebra, the basics. And she missed that. And because of the nature of maths, that core skill of the introduction to algebra, linear equations, she was cloudy on that. And that fed into all the other topics through junior cert maths and into leaving cert maths. And the whole thing just became a mess. And that can happen people at different stages, you know. So it can be just a misunderstanding of some core topics, which then layer up into other topics, and then you're in trouble.
So is the foundation really, if they can get algebra, is that the kind of, the foundation that everything else is built on?
Well, if you remember back in primary school, right? We were all back in primary school, and there was some kid who could multiply, 22 by 39 in his head in a second, Joe. So in primary school, arithmetic is your key skill, and mental arithmetic oftentimes. That's the student you're looking at and saying, "Wow, she's great at maths." But once you come in through 1st year, you're still dealing with arithmetic. But once you get into algebra at the end of the 1st year, start to 2nd year, that is your core skill. And almost everything else uses algebra all the way up to Leaving Cert higher level. Even Leaving Cert, if you think of everything, every aspect of paper 1 is based, you're going to be using algebra, and almost everything in paper 2 in Leaving Cert, even statistics. You'd wonder how, but there's inequalities in the toughest bit of statistics. You're dealing with algebraic inequalities. So that is your core skill. It is algebra.
So obviously, first year parents or first year students could be watching this, 3rd year junior certs, 6th year leaving certs. If they're struggling, would you recommend that's where they start? So to get the foundation, get algebra going and build up the confidence there.
Yeah, so even say that student, the girl I mentioned there, she really had a real difficulty with it. So, okay, she could learn she was good at leaving cert probability and trigonometry and things like that. But when it came down to solving the end of the question, 2x plus 10 is equal to 20, she was never quite sure what to do with that. So what I actually did with her, which was a more extreme case than normal, I went back and got her 1st year, 2nd year workbooks and got her to work through hundreds of linear equations until she aced it, until she had that. And then we built it up from there. Now, another student who's just, might be struggling a little bit with maths, might just find it difficult. They mightn't have to go back that far, but again, the first topic most teachers will do in 5th year is algebra, or at the start of 2nd year would be algebra. And that would be the time period that it's most important to focus on. If it's a parent, is my son or daughter understanding this part? And if not, if you could sit down and help them yourself, great. But if they need a little bit of extra help, that's the time to get it. And if they're struggling in 3rd year, maybe it's algebra you go back to revise.
So I remember the night before my mock exam doing my maths and running into my dad, and I was stuck in all this calculus and saying, I'm going to fail, and being really upset. And I didn't want to go into the exam. He made me go in. And I always remember he said to me, fail, but you're going in. And he gave me permission to fail, but it made a huge difference. But say it's the night before an exam. what advice would you give to students? Should they have a cheat sheet, a booklet? You know, as what type of notes should they prepare? Because maths is learning by doing. It's a practice type of subject. So how can a student organize themselves to prepare for that night before the exam?
Yeah, okay. So if it's the night before the exam, there's not a whole point then going back to studying your second year algebra if you're before your mock exam. At that stage, what you have to do is you're practicing actual leaving cert questions, practice leaving cert questions. Obviously they're there on examinations.ie, or you can go back to old mock papers and practice those. As you said, it's maths is learning by doing. For the vast majority of people, that's how they learn maths, by actually doing the questions rather than, we'll say, studying the textbook. So you got to go back and do those questions. And then if there's something, then if you're, let's say it's calculus, right? And you're there and you're saying, okay, I'm trying to do these leaving cert questions, but I'm not actually able to do them. I'm stuck on max min questions. Well, then you take out the textbook and you open up the textbook to that chapter. Maybe you read the little introductory part, but what you do then is you try the worked examples in the textbook, you cover them, you cover the solutions, you try the questions. And the beauty of that, of course, is that you'll see then the line that you got stuck on, and you can maybe get over that. What you'll find with calculus then, is then the end of every calculus question, what is it? It's a bit of algebra. It's an algebra skill to finish off that question. So again, you'll be practicing your algebra by practicing your calculus.
So for a lot of students, they love, like it or not, they love going to a book. For any other subjects, highlighting stuff, rewriting notes. And in my study skills programs, I show them how to cut through that very quickly. So rote learning is a big part of other subjects. Maths is different because it's learned by doing. So do you advise students practice a little bit of maths every night? What's the best type of maths study technique or habit or way of doing things? What would you advise students to do?
Yeah, well, you have it, and I know we might talk about word-based questions later on, and that's its own thing, and it's very important. But on your day-to-day maths practice, it is practicing questions, and you ask the question, should you practice it every night? And the answer is yes. Okay, for my opinion. I know even in primary school now, there's a bit of a move to reduce down homework. There's evidence out there that says, maybe homework isn't as beneficial as people would have thought before. However, for maths, it is a skills-based subject. Like I play a small little bit of golf, and what are the core skills in golf? Like, the putting, the chipping, those are the ones that you're doing most often. The professional golfer doesn't say, oh, I've plenty of putting done, I won't bother practicing that anymore. They do that every single day. They practice that, they practice their chipping, they practice all their basics. So it's the same with maths. On any given day, I would suggest that you would obviously naturally do your homework, and if you want to get better at it, what you do is you practice questions, whether it be from the textbook or past leaving cert questions. That's definitely the way to go.
And one of the things that I say to students is, I think, and you can give me your view on this, that the key to maths is mood. Because if your energy is low, that means your application is low. And if you're in a bad mood or a low energy state, let's just put it that way. What I mean by mood, I'm talking about state, you're going to give up quicker. So is there a good or a bad time to study maths in the evening? Like, straight after your dinner when you've eaten all this food? I'm always curious as to, times when people's energy is strong and good. Will they have that extra little bit of resilience to push through, or is there a time frame, like 20 minutes every night at the same time? And any kind of ideas around that?
Well, there's a few things in that question that you ask, and I suppose you mentioned your dad there earlier, and what he said to you, you go in and fail, but you're going in. And you mentioned there just a kind of I know you're a big fan of listening to music and getting, having the music on to get in the kind of mood with it. But what I would say, I know my own dad said to me when I was studying, at one stage I was studying with music on, and he said, is there going to be music in the exam, in the exam hall? And I was like, probably not. And he said, you should study in the environment that your exam is going to be on. to be like, because that's when you want to be in your peak performance, so you don't want to be kind of reliant on the music or something like that. So we differ a little bit, myself and yourself, on that front. I'd be saying the quiet room for doing maths, you're really focused on it. However, I'd agree with you completely about there's different times of the day and different, your mindset is very important for maths. So on a Saturday, I would suggest to students, or Sunday, like if you can do it first thing in the morning, that is ideal. In my school, if you went back to the 60s, I know they timetable maths, leaving cert 6th-year maths, first class every morning, because they said that was the time you were freshest, So there's definitely something to that. But naturally, on a Monday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're in school during the day. So again, I would suggest that for me, it was when I came home, straight after school, I sat down, I did maths first. I did applied maths second. That might tell you something about what I was interested in as well. But it was, those are the ones I got stuck into straight away before, maybe I suppose I got a bit jaded. And as you said, before you had the dinner and maybe, you weren't quite as fresh after that.
I was going to say spot the left brain or maths.
There you go.
Applied maths. What I say to students who don't like maths or else struggle with maths or else have this concept, and you spoke about mindset, a lot of people have this belief, I'm just no good at maths. And that is because they might have got the bad test result in 4th class, or 3rd class, and it's this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. So 2 things. The first thing I always say to students is sandwich your maths. Start off with something that's a good subject, then put it in there, and then go on to your next subject. But just a little bit on the mindset. How do you shift that a little bit from a little bit like that girl that you were working with? She had this just idea, I'm no good at maths. How do you build up someone's confidence to shift that?
Well, Joe, it's a big question, and there is an element naturally of, some students are really good at maths instantly, and I've seen a few of those just real maths geniuses. But for the majority of people, it's not like that. We all have to learn maths, and we have to be taught maths. And if you have a good teacher, that really helps. And there's times for all of us where you're struggling with maths in a topic that maybe you're not great at. I remember myself in college, there was definitely topics there that, I just found really difficult. So what do you do? Well, it is the mindset, as you said. So, I suppose what I would suggest is, like, a lot of us have heard about the growth mindset, to feel that you can get better at this difficult topic. And if I was to say about that student, the girl, okay, if you asked her now, is she good at maths? She probably still wouldn't say she was great at maths, but she jumped those hurdles at the time. She got a H3 in her honors maths in the end, a H3. And the great thing about a H3 is it's 102 points.
Yeah.
So she got more points in her maths than she got from any other subject.
Yeah.
Now, what happened there? Okay, well, what happened was this. Once she actually got better at that thing that was holding her back, all of a sudden she was getting questions right rather than getting questions wrong. And that's the beauty of maths, that there is a right answer. So the more you practice, the better you get. And all of a sudden you're getting the right answer. You're getting the kind of good feeling from the maths rather than the bad feeling of being stuck. And it turns into a virtuous circle rather than a vicious circle.
That's great. Yeah, it's that feeling when you're stuck to kind of work around it and to so just on that, because obviously maths now has become more wordy, and with the project maths, things changed an awful lot, and some students really struggle with that, and you have different types of learners. You have visual people, you have auditory, you have kinesthetic, so everybody learns differently, but suddenly they're faced with a lot of words and not just numbers. Any advice on that?
Yeah, well, I would suggest that, the old course suited me better as a student than the new course would have. Would I be a maths teacher if I had studied project maths? I'm not 100% sure that I would, because it is far more word based. Like for students out there at Leaving Cert, you got to remember 50% of the marks are based on what they call the context and applications, the problem solving questions. At Junior Cert, there's far more problem solving questions, word based questions in there now than there used to be. Now, you mentioned about highlighting. Okay, and I'll tell you a little story there. This was right back at the start of Project Maths, and the students I had, they were in fifth year at the time. The students had done the old junior cert, which is far more solve this equation, find x. So there wasn't that many words in it. And now they were doing Project Maths. And I remember the first exam that we did that had problem solving questions in it. I remember one student in the class took out his highlighter and started highlighting the key words in the question. And I remember looking at him doing it. And I remember the other students looking at him doing it. And they were thinking, what are you doing highlighting the page? And I asked him after, I said, come here, what was the story with the highlighter? What were you doing there? And what did he say? He said, well, highlighting it makes me think, what is the most important part of this question?
Yeah.
And it makes him slow down, read the question, I suppose, a couple of times, take out the important bit, remind himself of, okay, it's meter squared or whatever the unit's going to be. And it helped him to get started with the question. And I can tell you, without me actually directing it at that time, because this was the very start, one by one, all the students started doing that. And by the time we got to the Leaving Cert, obviously we had taught it out more, and we looked at the theory of problem solving, and that turns out to be a great idea. Highlight it.
Yeah, and I do that in my own study skills sessions to pick out the key words. So that's crucial. So for first and second year parents, it's really to get that solid foundation in algebra. And as you said, that bleeds into the others. For junior cert students, any advice for junior cert students coming into the exams? Because it's their first set of state exams. Log books. Should they have, all the formulas written out? Any advice for junior certs?
Yeah, and the junior certs this year, I suppose there's a couple of things going on for them. One, they've had to deal with the classroom-based assessments. Okay, so they were the first group of junior cert students to have that. And also, of course, they missed out on the regular school for March, April, May of second year. So without being too alarmist, you might be a little bit behind in terms of covering the course, and the course is quite long for junior cert. So what I be suggesting to you guys out there is, don't be leaving maths now till say, oh, that'll be okay down in March and April and May of this year. I would definitely be spending a good bit of time trying to work on it, trying to revise things you did during lockdown last year. I would definitely say that. Absolutely. You mentioned the table books. Sometimes you would see the students, just don't have them in second year, have lost them. They went missing somewhere along the way. Absolutely make sure you have that. I'm going to tell you another thing. It's your calculator. What I say with your calculator is you have to be fluent with your calculator. You do not want to be inside in your exam trying to figure out, how did you do that thing with the function button? How did you get that table up on your calculator? You want that to be simple. You want that to be, you mentioned rote learning. You want that to be just to be automatic for you, that you're just typing onto the calculator and you're not thinking, what do you have to do? Because I've seen students struggle with that, in the exam, and even say students who were in radian mode instead of degree mode in their junior cert, and they didn't really know the difference. So I would think there's absolutely important to be
Sorry,
fluent
what were
with
the
those.
two modes? Could you just clarify those
Yeah,
again?
just that's the thing in trigonometry. So
Yes.
in junior cert, you're going to be in degree mode, so there should be a capital D on the top of the calculator. But sometimes, your calculator could be just lying in your bag, and through a series of buttons being pressed, you could be in radian mode, which is R, or gradient, which is G, and you might notice, and all of a sudden you're getting the wrong answers for all the questions in trigonometry. So it's something that if you've practiced enough, you'll know it automatically. But if you haven't practiced that much, it could catch you on the day.
And
So
any advice for for parents? I have a lot of viewers who are parents, and parents are tearing their hair out looking at these problem-solving questions. How can they help their sons or daughters in a typical exam year or first year? But any advice on that?
yeah, so a lot of parents, like I've got small kids here, so we've an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and so we're able to help them out with their maths at home here. But a lot of students, a lot of parents would say once they've been past 6 classes into first year, and particularly when they hit algebra, things got complicated. And it is true. And algebra is taught a little bit differently now to how it was taught, say, 20 years ago. So it can be difficult for parents to help out with that. However, with questions, the problem-solving questions are often more common sense. It could be a question about a garden, and you're putting a patio into the garden, and what's the area of the patio going to be. So oftentimes parents can just sit down with the student and they engage with it and they tease it out in the problem solving methodology of just basically, let's try something, see does it work. If it doesn't work, let's try something else. And if a student, just like your dad gave you the permission to fail, if a parent can give a student the permission to try a maths question and get it wrong, and then they say, okay, let's have another look at it, but they're not getting stressed out, that can definitely lead to the growth mindset of where, okay, we try, we see how we do, and then we try again. So I would definitely encourage parents to engage with those questions with their young students.
And by the way, my dad said to me, fail, but the next day when I come in, he said, that'll learn you. In other words, that'll teach you. And I think I went from 35% in the mock to a C1 as it was back then. So a little bit like that girl, what you said, it took that failure to actually get the success itself in the Leaving Cert. So, this is a big part of success, is the failure. I think, and then you get to the next little bit of learning. So it's what does fail stand for? It's what is it? It'll come back to me now. First attempt in learning, isn't that it?
Okay, very good. Yeah, first attempt in learning. Yes, absolutely. And I suppose the parents definitely, if they can go in with that idea, that can bring you a long way. Realistically, when you get up to Leaving Cert level, it might be going past a lot of parents, even if they're really good at maths themselves, because there is a lot of specifics there. And oftentimes, if a student is struggling, they do sometimes need to go to someone else then, particularly
And that's a perfect cue to go to you, because Eoghan, you've got the tuition center. So if you do need extra help, Eoghan is a terrific teacher. Thank you for your time here today, Eoghan. And I know we're going to send out a link there to your center and the courses that you offer. And for any students that are struggling, Eoghan is the man to really help out. And thank you for your time here today, Eoghan. We appreciate it. Any closing words for students who are really stressed out? So there's a lot of anxiety out there. Any closing, and for students who feel that they've missed a lot, any closing words for them?
Well, if I had three top tips, I would say practice, practice, practice. Yeah. That's it. And you know what? Once you go from getting questions wrong to getting questions right, all of a sudden maths seems far more enjoyable, and you get energy from it rather than it taking energy from you. And so practice is the key.
That's brilliant. Eoghan, thanks for your time, Slán, and we'll chat to you soon. Take care.
Man, Ray. Thanks as always. Good luck to you.